Welcome to Three Mums Podcast, hosted by Natalie, Anthea, and Charlene. This is a space where you'll get nothing but real conversation. This is your moment to pause, have a laugh, get involved, and come on our journey. Open, honest, and free always. Hashtag the Three Mums Way.
This is part 2 of episode 2, where we talked about initially, is motherhood what we expected? And we have kind of expanded on that discussion a bit more by talking about, the things you desire. Can you ever be prepared for what you desire? And that is a very, very broad statement. We've used the angle of motherhood, and it's not just motherhood. I think it's in everything. Welcome to episode 2, part 2 of Can You Be Prepared for What You Desire? And as you know, this is just where we're open, we're honest, we're free in everything that we say. And I think you got a real touch on that with, our previous story. Anthea shared about motherhood, shared polycystic ovaries. I shared my version of that. And it let you know that I don't think you can ever be fully prepared for motherhood in any way, shape or form, but you as a person and how you handle it is what takes you through that season and then actually carries you through that season as we're still walking that journey. But I was a little cheeky and I kind of asked Charlene a question in the previous, discussion, and she didn't answer it at the time, but I did ask her, how did it feel having a baby in a pandemic? Charlene's been married for many years and she had planned her baby, unlike Anthea and I, who had not necessarily planned. Well, I did plan Joelle, but hadn't planned our first children. So our first children were born under different circumstances, but Charlene had planned for that. But would you say, sis, that you can ever be fully prepared for what you desire? As you desired a child, but did those desires come to fruition the way you expected?
No.
Okay.
I think that planning's great, and I'm so thankful that we wanted children, and I got pregnant within months of desiring to have baby Talia. Mm-hmm. But I remember I got pregnant and I was on tour. I was on tour of the Kingdom Choir in America on a 6-week tour. Unbeknown to me, I'm dancing around, and my body, I could feel some changes. And actually, there's a funny story because while I was on tour, for those that know me, these ladies do. I'm not clingy with Chris. Let me just give a bit of backstory. Chris and I, my husband, we work together. So he is my producer. He is my MD. He's also the Kingdom Choir's producer and their MD. So we basically work together a lot. We're together. And I'm just not clingy with Chris. He does his thing. I do his thing. Some of the choir members do ask, how do you guys work together? We're not in each other's pockets. Yeah. But on this tour, I was just a little bit emotional. I remember calling my sister and saying, I just don't know what's going on. He's not sitting with me. He's not spending time with me. And Natalie's like, sure, this doesn't sound like you. I'm just not like that. And I was feeling really clingy. Chris is getting frustrated, but that's a whole other conversation because when he does tour life different to me. It's an interesting topic when you have certain expectations of people that you haven't explained to them. I had an expectation of Chris on tour and he didn't meet that expectation, but we talked through it and we worked through some of our differences. But I was pregnant. My boobs were tingly, they were hurting, the smells were crazy. And I'm like, I need to take a test. I really need to take a test. Took a test, found out in a little town in America, I can't even remember the name of it. And me and Chris got that test and that line turned blue within seconds. I was well and truly pregnant. And so when you say, was I prepared? Yes, on one hand, we prepared, we wanted to have a child. But guys, when I got back, it's like my body said, you are home now, let's be sick. And I unfortunately had hashimotosis. Literally, I got back, Sissy had just purchased her property while I was away, and she wanted to show me her new house. I was so excited, so I hadn't even gone in the bathroom. I got off the plane, I grabbed my bag, I was like, Nat! And we're in the car, and this nausea just overtook my life. It was horrible. I was like, Natalie, you need to stop. I'm going to vomit. It was literally like night and day. The day before, hours before, I'm eating scrambled egg and smoked salmon on the way home. And within hours, I feel sick. I remember that evening, Chris bought me some soup. And guys, from that day until I was around 4 months, I literally vomited every single day. I had to go to hospital. I was on a drip. I had no energy. I had to take tablets. It was a lot. Yeah, my pregnancy story it's an interesting one, and it's obviously this topic of can you be prepared is so broad because it can be related to just life, having a job, having a desire you want. But for pregnancy, for me, I was not prepared for that. I was not prepared to be so sick and to feel so down. I've never dealt with depression. It's not something that I've really had. And I actually remember speaking to you, Amp and Nats, and on a FaceTime call, you guys called me, and I remember Amp, you were like, Shah, I've been telling you it will pass. And that constantly was like, Shah, it will pass. It just felt like my world was just going spinning round every day. I'd get up and I'd think, oh, maybe today it's going to be different. And, you know, by the time this podcast comes out, I'm actually releasing a song about that experience called Of Love, just feeling so down and so low. And all I could focus on was meeting my baby girl. That was the only thing that got me through. I've never felt so low. And so I wasn't prepared for how I would feel, you know, at this point in time. I'm in a good place with my husband, but, you know, that was really hard for him. I'm very affectionate and very tactile. I didn't really want to touch. I didn't want to kiss. I didn't want to, I was sick, vomiting all the time. And even after that, unfortunately, I had low placenta, which didn't really affect anything, but it's just another thing that I was dealing with. So I had to go to hospital constantly and get loads of checks. Remember, it's a pandemic, so I'm having to do these appointments on my own. Chris is sitting outside in the car. And just to kind of lastly say that I got gestational diabetes. And if I'm honest, I'm more than happy to share about it. But at the time, I think I felt a bit embarrassed. And so when you ask that, like, can you ever be prepared? Like, when you're that sick, because I had the hyperemesis, I could only eat carbs. And for those that don't know, gestational diabetes, for me, it happened because I was eating so many carbs because it was all I could eat. I kind of pride myself on being healthy. And I think that's where the embarrassment came. And it's stupid that I felt embarrassed because you cannot predict what's going to happen when you have a baby. And so what if I was not eating my usual foods? Like, the only thing that sat well with me was bread. I was eating Whopper burgers, not every day, but I was eating burgers. And just my usual smoothies and greens, and I just couldn't eat it. And so I got gestational diabetes. You know, thank God it wasn't something that had to be managed with medication. My numbers were great. I remember by the end of my pregnancy, the specialist was like, this is a waste of time. We don't need you to do this anymore. But guys, I had to be pricking my finger 4 times a day. It was horrible. This is during a pandemic. And just to add to that, I unfortunately lost 2 people that mean so much to me within 24 hours. And so I've kind of bombarded you all with the short version of a very in-depth story, but hell no, I wasn't prepared for this. Hell no. And I am so thankful to my family and friends and God. I've shared this before on socials, just kind of said that it's that thing that joy and pain really can coexist, because being at home in a pandemic, losing those loved ones, dealing with grief, there was some stuff happening in my family as well. That was hard. And I, again, pride myself on being a very happy person. If I fall down, I can usually pull myself out of a hole. I'm feeling low, can play my worship music, read my word for today and just enjoy God. And I can kind of pull myself out of a slump, and nothing was working. This deep wave of sadness just kept engulfing me, and it just wouldn't, I couldn't control it. I remember saying, Nats, I feel so sad. And I remember speaking to my friend Kemi, and her words really helped me. She was like, Shah, you haven't lost your joy. It's still there. You just have to go through your process. You just have to go through your process. But that joyfulness, it's there. And it's amazing. Amongst all the things that happened, there was so much laughter in the family, but I've basically answered the question. People, you can plan as much as you want, and you should plan. And I'm glad that I planned, because, you know, I love that I've had my child at this point in my life. Sometimes I do look at her and think, why did I wait so long? Because she makes me so happy. she just enhances every part of my life. So it's like, on one hand, me and Chris are sometimes like, why did we wait so long? Because we were planning and we were waiting, and I get it, but yeah, you can't plan. You just have to go with the flow.
Yeah. What about you, Amp? Do you think you can ever fully be prepared for what you desire? And that's a big, broad statement.
It's a very,
like
very,
yeah,
very,
but you're
very,
like me though. You married at 24, so there's an expectation of that marriage. You touched on that a bit in our last discussion, but you know, do you think you can be prepared for the things you desire? Marriage, husband, job, career, children, house, whatever it is.
Yeah, for me, the answer is I don't think you can ever really, really be fully prepared. Yeah. As I touched upon in the last podcast, pretty much had resigned to the fact that I was never going to be able to have a child anyway. And I had mentioned that, being admitted to hospital because my ovary had twisted, and the doctor just telling me, yep, you're pregnant, nearing 11 weeks, and my world just being, turned on its head. And what I didn't tell you was that in that moment, they had to tell me that the state of my ovary meant that there's a high possibility that I wouldn't be able to see through the rest of my period, because it was in such a bad state. They would have to operate. And I remember the following morning going into surgery and literally looking at the surgeon before they put me under and saying to her, please do not let me lose this baby. And all I can remember is waking up and being heavily, heavily bandaged. And from all I could remember, I was told that they were going to perform keyhole surgery just to go inside and to untwist the cyst and, do what they can. Yeah. And basically, once they went inside, as I said before, the ovary was in such a bad condition, they had to make the decision to actually remove my left ovary. And obviously waking up to see all these being blooded and heavily bandaged, I just was like, what has happened? Like, what has happened to me? And they kept me, I just remember it felt like forever being kept waiting to see
someone to speak to you.
Yeah. And subsequently, when I did finally get to see someone, they had told me that yes, they'd gone inside, and the state of my ovary was so bad that there was no point keeping it. So they had to remove it. And in that moment, I was like, well, what about my child? And they were like, well, it's still early stages, but, you're a high risk pregnancy, so we have to keep a close eye. And I guess in that moment, knowing that for so long, I had said I didn't want a child, and and all the rest of it, and then changing my mindset that I did want to have a child, and then now being pregnant, just finding out that I was pregnant, not under the circumstances that I would have desired for my life, but sometimes God's ways are not our ways, and that was how it happened for me. And so I was just, I don't know, immediately just like heartbroken, because I just thought the worst. I'm not going to be able to carry full term, but I did. I carried full term, and I was able to have a natural
one ovary.
Exactly.
I was able to have a natural pregnancy, natural labor, and then even after that, I was satisfied. I'm not gonna lie, I was satisfied. Yes, I touched before that. Yes, I missed a bit about being independent and not being accountable to anyone, but I genuinely was satisfied with the one. I had the one child, the one ovary. Let's just do this. Yeah. Yeah.
Until a few years later, where that desire was there again.
To be fair, Nat, it wasn't actually there. It was meeting my partner,
Okay.
who, you know, had said that he had the desire to have another child as he had one previous. And I had to be straight and say, I have one ovary. And I do
it's a
not
whole
know.
different scenario now.
Yeah, it's a completely different scenario. I didn't even think I could have one with the 2 ovaries that I have. Now I have one ovary, and it just halves my chances already. So, you know, if you want to still pursue this relationship, then know that I cannot guarantee. And to be honest, he was quite set on having another one. So again, I felt I was back in that cycle of feeling the pressure. You know, like I can't promise you anything. You know, but guys, I had another child.
Another 2
with one ovary.
With one ovary, I had a second child, and like Charlene, it was a different pregnancy in regards to my health. I suffered from gestational diabetes, and I was ugly.
Listen. We're not going to go there in this discussion. We're not going to go there at all. Because we know
some photos need to be shared on socials at some point.
Listen, are we really going to hot ourselves up like this?
Yeah, man.
I'm down for it. I don't look like
we said we're going to be open.
We're going to be open, honest, free.
She was real. She was real. She was real. That's the thing.
The pregnancy face, the pregnancy bloating.
And you had nausea all the way through with your second
nausea.
As well.
You weren't ugly. You were pregnant.
We weren't ugly, but boy, it was a different version of us. Like
it was a different version. It's a different version. You know what? But seriously, like I being pregnant for the second time wasn't prepared. Yes, I had said in my mind that if it happens, I'll be happy for it to happen, but I didn't know what my chances were. So it took, you know, I just had to deal with it when it happened. And you know, I think it was more of a okay, like what my body actually is operating on a different frequency to what it's ever done before. And I asked the questions like, so why didn't it happen when I wanted it to happen? Yeah, when I wanted it to happen, I just didn't.
When you were
understand.
married, when technically, when you were in your 20s, when they say you're more fertile, younger, but your story's completely a flip side. Like
exactly.
So, and I think your story is so inspiring because there's women listening who are of a similar age and they're like, I have kids. And how old were you when you had your third again?
I was 39.
With one ovary.
One ovary. Still with the one ovary.
One ovary, exactly.
Still with the one ovary. So, you know, like as the question says, can you ever be prepared? There's things that your body, even if you think like physically, that your body has to be in a certain, I don't know, be a certain way for certain things, for you to be pregnant or to get pregnant. I'm living proof that doesn't even have to be the case, because
it's a good thing, but it's not always the case at all.
It would be, but it's like my body wasn't prepared. It wasn't prepared because by rights, I should have really only been able to have one.
Yeah.
But, you know, things happen.
You now.
And now I'm a mother of
Look
3.
at you now.
Exactly.
Now.
Seriously. You know what? See, I could go a whole different angle. Like, even if we stick on just this topic of motherhood, obviously, as I said, I was the youngest out of us, so 27. Everyone would know me for my hair and how I dressed and everything else. I clean lost myself in that pregnancy. It was a Wednesday. And I'm just gonna stick on a shallow version of this topic. It was a Wednesday, and I just know that I woke up and I washed my face. I washed my face, and it was happening over about a week's period. Like every day I was washing my face, and the puffiness was just taking longer to settle. Like if I was going out, if I had to be somewhere for 10, I knew I needed to be up by 7 to wash it, and just it needed to settle. My face needed to settle. But this day I washed and I washed. And it wasn't changing. It wasn't changing. It just wasn't. Everything was just swollen. Everything was twice the size of its original size. And I remember Anthony was away. He had gone on a work trip. Can't remember the name of what those trips are, but he'd gone away and he called me to pick him up. And I remember calling him and I was saying, babes, I look different. And he just dismissed me as like, whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. Like, my face has changed. And he was just like, whatever. And I picked him up. And the moment I picked him up, I hugged him. I was like, look, can't you see? And he's like, nope, can't see anything. I never forget, we went to TGI's. For me, pregnancy, there's just no fun, there's no joy. I'm that woman that doesn't like any woman who has a good pregnancy, because I feel that we should all have the same experience. If I go through hardship,
I concur.
Then I feel like we should all go through this. Eve ate that apple for all women. So why do some women just glow, put on just a bump, which is an apple shape, you know, they don't gain any weight, not even on their fingernail.
Your bump is gorgeous though.
Huh?
You have gorgeous bumps.
Yeah, all right. So the shape of my bump was cool, but yeah, you know. Yeah.
But all I'm gonna know.
Your liberties.
We'll get to that. I'm sitting in TGI's with Anthony. I felt like it this day, knowing that there was going to be a major consequence for eating it, because like I had terrible heartburn. So certain foods my body just did not digest. So I knew I was going to pay for this meal, but I felt like it. And I was sitting there and I was like, babes, can you not see like my nose, my lips had swollen? I was talking with a lisp. Like, it's like my tongue swelled. And he's like, nope. Don't know what you're talking about. And it just continued to get worse for me. And everyone around me told me I look fine. I am someone who does not need the affirmation of others or even external opinion when it comes to something. I'm very good at seeing something for myself, analyzing it for myself, and no one could lie to me. I did not recognize this person in the mirror. And it literally was like day and night for, I hate about 5 months. And so for the last 4 months, I did not know this girl in the mirror. None of my clothes fit, but I was actually very mean to this lady. I'll be honest with you, and I look back at it now because I refuse to buy myself anything else. Like, I am not adorning her in any nice way. You know, she is not sticking around. Like, I just wanted to get this pregnancy over and done with. And I also, once again, I said to you in the last discussion that I secretly desired God to kind of wreck my plans, because I wanted a child, but didn't really want to reach a point where I planned for it out of fear of not conceiving. So, but I'd always imagined it. I was that woman that actually, I'll be honest, I had put a pillow up in my stomach, been at home on my own and just imagine that's me with my size 10 size, you know. So everything's exactly the same. It's just this belly. And now you've got this, I worked up until 35 weeks, and my job, as you know, is standing. So I'm standing for sometimes 12 hours a day, doing hair, bending over, washing everything. I swelled so badly. Like, you literally could see and hear the water in my wrists, in my hands, in my feet. I remember going to a wedding at 35 weeks, bought a new pair of sandals for this wedding, and it was one of the hottest days of the year.
I remember.
And my foot swelled so bad. As a result of that, Anthony had to cut the sandal off of my foot. Like, my foot looked like, you lot guys have ever seen The Night of the Professor when he slammed his foot on the pedal in the car. Like, I didn't know. And you know, anyone who knows what we don't have big ankles. My ankles were wide. Like, so as much as I was still shapely, but I had gained like 3 stones in total in that pregnancy. Do you understand what I mean? Prior to this, I was going to this thing called Versatile Fitness with my sister. When I say this weekly workout was hardcore so
levels,
I was
so
definitely
good.
in the biggest place of my life prior to conceiving Josiah. But that pregnancy was nothing like what I expected. And I think the final icing on the cake for me was it, you know, I started having like Braxton Hicks contracting. My body was preparing for pregnancy from about 36 weeks. So, and the doctors kept saying they don't think I'm gonna last all the way. So I constantly was thinking I'm gonna go into labor, which is very taxing on you emotionally, especially when you want the baby out because you want to look like you again. And I remember going to the cinema with Anthony and bumping into a guy that I used to work with. And saying that, hi, like, I'm not going to say his name, but hi to this guy. And he's like, oh, hi, yeah, you're right. And I was like, you good? Like, how's your wife? How's your, you know, child? And he's like, and he's kind of looking at me like, oh, okay. So he's like, yeah, they're cool. How are you? And he's like, oh, pregnant, congratulations. And he walked off and I got in the lift with Anthony and I said, he didn't recognize me. And he was like, he did. And I was like, he did not recognize me. He humored that discussion because I said certain things that let him know I knew him. He didn't recognize me. Within about an hour of seeing him, I get a message on direct messenger or whatever on Facebook saying, oh my gosh, hi Nat, just realized it was you. I'm so sorry. Now, this is where men, you have to be a little bit more tactile. He literally said to me, I didn't recognize you with the swollen face, big nose thing, but don't worry, my wife had that too. My wife had that too, it will go. I was just like, I literally laughed till I cried. That's one thing with me. I can take a laugh. I'm the first to laugh at myself, but it stung in a different way. It's like, I don't look like me. Like, this was just nothing like what I expected. But thank God the features returned, and you know, I went back to my normal self.
See, but the thing is, we're laughing about it now, and you're talking about it in such a great way. But
it was
pregnancy is a lot, and when your appearance isn't
9
how
months of not knowing who you are, I didn't know what I liked to eat anymore. I didn't know what I like. Anyone who knows me knows my favorite food on this earth is Haagen-Dazs ice cream, and don't tell me it's not in a food group because it is. So, and I went off ice cream. Natalie didn't touch ice cream for 9 months. Is that what I mean? And I went off everything. I didn't know myself in my pregnancy with Josiah, and I didn't know if that version of me would return. Actually, as a result of it, Charlene benefited from clothes I had never worn. Like, I remember her like needing stuff for shows, and I remember letting her borrow it and then saying, just keep it, because I could not see myself back in this stuff because this version of me was so different. And, you know, granted, as I said, I gained 3 stone, but actually predominantly it was all water. Like, I had so much water retention. So like over the next few weeks after having him, I dropped weight so instantly that I had actually only gained like a stone with Josiah. After baby and the blood and the water, I literally only gained a stone, but the water definitely changed my shape. That's what I would actually say to you. Like my shape, and I just felt weak, like my joints, because, you know, as I said to you, that's the thing about, when you're pregnant, you got that hormone relaxing that goes around your body. So you feel physically stronger than you are. So I didn't realize the pressure I put on joints that were already weakened from the type of job that I do. So at such a young age, at 27, I had terrible back problems now, you know, my pelvic area. And I remember like going to the gym and just being ready to hit the workouts the way I mentally was used to working out. And no, like I had to allow my body the time to build itself back up. I would be grimacing in pain while I'm working out, but you know, it was like the one good workout I might get for the week, and I did it to the best of my ability. But I never forget, like, I joined this spin class with Charlene, and it was one of the most hardcore spin classes.
Miss it.
Joe, if ever you see this podcast, we're just gonna say you're the best spin instructor. She was a lady called Joe. And she was in, at the time, it was Fitness First in Beckenham. I think they've changed the name of that gym now. But like, she literally was what I would call a personal trainer in a group setting.
Yeah.
And I never forget the first time going to her, she just saw me and Charlene across the room, came right over to us, introduced herself, asked us if we had anything going on. I said, I was just a new mum. He was a couple months old. I have a knee problem, my back. And she's like, right, you need to come to the front. And I was like, I've never done this before. I'm not coming to the front. I'm sitting at the back. She's like, no, I need to see you. I need to see that you're doing this correctly, you know. But the thing is, what she didn't know about me is I'm extremely competitive. So you put that pressure on me, I'm gonna work even hard. So it was a good thing that she brought me to the front. She did it so that I could never come back and say I got an injury from my class. But as a result, it pushed me further. But I remember there was this one song that she always did in her class, and it was to Kanye's tune. I can't remember the name of the song, but it was, his song is a 7-minute long song. And there was a certain pedal she did on a routine she did on the bike that it killed the joints. Like, and that was my goal song. Like, that was me, that was my song in my mind. And it's never something I said verbally to anybody, but when I can achieve this whole song without ever having to pause or take a break, I know that my physical fitness had got, and I just remember, like, I'd be on it and I'd close my eyes on that bike and I'd be praying through this routine.
Make it work for you.
Yeah, and she had a line, she used to say, make it work for you. And I actually still say this line to this day in anything that I'm doing. Whatever it is that you're approaching, whatever new season you're in, whatever it is that you so desired that in your mind you're now saying isn't what you thought it was going to be, make it work for you. Do you understand what I mean? Like, make the best of that moment, the best of that situation. Just know it has to get better, regardless of what it is. And I'm using a very trivial example of just finding myself during that, you know, during that pregnancy and after, but just something as small as being able to do this 7-minute song. I remember the first day that I did it, and I was like, yeah. And what I realized is that her class was always hard. Even when your fitness level was at its peak, it was always hard, because now you just went harder in it. You never were not tired, but your resilience and the strength or whatever you had to get through the class improved. Do you understand what I mean? And I think that's how life works with everything. Whatever it is that we desire, whatever it is that you go for, just be prepared to know that it may not go the way that you plan, but you were made for this. You were made for whatever season is you're in right now, or that is about to come upon you, and you can get through it, and you should make it work for you. And I think that we've definitely done that, even with the few scenarios that we've given you. Because as you can see, there is a lot of stories between us as women. Like, I'm so excited for you, for our listeners, you know, to come with us on this journey, because even here in Anthea, like, I forget that my sister has had 2 children with one ovary. Like, she's a walking miracle. That is something to just literally, like, she's defied so many odds. Do you understand what I mean? But I still truly believe that the foundation of that was words she spoke over herself. So there's so many things you can take from our little stories. I mean, do any of you have anything else you want to share on the topic now?
You guys just saying about, well, not you guys, Nats, you saying speaking over yourself, because it just actually, as I'm thinking about that whole thing of, is it what you desire? I actually remember somebody saying to me, this person was projecting, they didn't feel good about themselves, but I remember them saying to me, you know, I'm just so glad I've had my kids, you know, before 30, because I don't want to be an old mum like you. And I remember standing there,
and just madness.
I remember feeling so happy that I didn't need to cuss her down. I didn't need to. I was like, I can actually see you. Actually see the way that you feel about yourself. I can see it in this moment. I can see the root of it. You don't feel good about yourself, so you're just projecting how you feel onto me. And it's like, when I think about that moment versus what I went through in pregnancy, because I know how fit I was probably my fittest when I got pregnant. And there's a kind of a stigma that, you know, when you're older, it's harder, and when you're older, this and that, and which is where that negativity has come from, which is what she tried to project to me, which is why I love Anthea's story. And I think when I was pregnant and went through those things, I actually remembered the words she said. And going through the gestational diabetes and going through what I was going through, I remember kind of feeling, well, I know that what she said wasn't true, and I didn't accept those words, but it's like, it was a hard moment for me. But yeah, you just got to speak life, speak truth, and people will project their foolishness on you, and you just like, flush that. I'm not going to take that part, but I'll take that part.
Yeah. What do you think, Annie?
I think as well, when it comes to preparation, you can always take from other people's experience, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your journey is going to go exactly the same way. I mean, when you think of what textbooks say, what people say, what, you know, you can get so many different nuggets of advice from so many different resources. But when it comes down to it, it's finding your own way.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, finding what works for you. And the key thing that you've said, that Naps, is about the resilience.
Yeah.
You know,
you don't even know you've got it in you till you step down that road.
I've discovered about myself, you know, in the years that I've been, like, I have to say it, I am a strong woman.
Exactly.
Like, you know, the level of self-sacrifice that you have to give. You know, we talk about sleep deprivation.
Exactly.
We talk about, you know, just
living
your
that
physical,
right now.
your body, like, the layers are endless.
You know, and then the emotional.
We didn't even touched on that.
Listen,
we
haven't. We're going to go on that. That's a whole different discussion.
Life right now.
Whole different discussion.
It's a lot. It's a lot. So, you know, you don't, and the thing is, each child, that's the thing for me, is so individual. They're so unique. Each of my children have their own specific needs. And literally,
splitting yourself.
I have to split myself into 3. And it's not that, you know, I give, yeah.
You can't forget your partner. You can't. You're splitting yourself more than just your children. Do you understand what I mean? So 4 ways for you.
But you know what? He gets the smallest part. But you know, I'm
even
just
that. We've not even touched on that.
That's a whole different discussion.
I'll let you finish that, but I have something to add to
that. But what I was saying, yeah, the needs of them individually is immense, you know, and then sometimes it's in that moment I have to literally take a breath and say, right, you know, they're from their emotional, if they're tired, if they're not getting on with one another, even if my emotional cup is full, it's finding that place where I'm just like, you know what, you can do this. I can cater to their every need. You know, tomorrow's another day. You know, sometimes you just have to park what's happened today and just take tomorrow as another day. And for me, that's how I've got through. And I think one thing we haven't really touched upon so much is even just the external appearance, you know, that just because, you know, you're a mother, it doesn't mean you have to lose, you know,
who you are. No.
Who you are. Even, and sometimes it is about just putting yourself together in such a way that you can step out of your front door. On the inside, I'm not feeling good because I know like how tough, you know, maybe I didn't get a full night's sleep, maybe, you know, I'm being pulled left, right and center, but you know, it is doable. It is doable, but it's finding that resilience, finding that strength within, just to say that you're able to keep going.
Yeah, you definitely, I think that is definitely a whole nother discussion, and we're definitely gonna share that with you guys, because as you'll see, we are 3 mums for multiple reasons, and it's so much more than just these stories that we've got to share, because fashion is one of the biggest things that we love. It's such at the core of us. And if I do you have anything you want to say, Shah, before I kind of...
No, I think...
Yeah, I think if I'm going to close on anything, it is that maybe even if you're going through an experience right now, whether it be work, motherhood, life, whatever life is presenting to you, that is an area that you so desired, and it might not be going the way you expected, do today what will make you feel great about tomorrow, whether that means doing your hair, doing your nails, dressing a certain way, like, and I'm a firm believer on inside out transformation, but I do fully believe that sometimes you just got to do a little from the outside in, like, while that inside out transformation is taking place. So I think that's maybe the nugget we're going to leave you with today, to just, you know, do what makes stepping out and facing tomorrow that little bit easier for you. If it means putting on your lippy, like I've known for putting on my lipstick for the school, and I don't care. Do you get what I'm trying to say to you? And I know mums that mostly think, they literally come to me and they're like, how do you have time in the morning? And it's like, this really wasn't hard work. It took me 2 seconds, but it's important to me. I might not
do what works for you.
Yeah, it might not And there's days when I don't feel any way. There's days when I'll fling on my cap and as long as I've got my earrings on and I've got lip gloss and I feel perfectly fine. But you know, for me, I can feel rough on the inside. Like Anthea said, sleep deprived, you know, the kids are pulling you left, right, and center. Along with whatever emotional stuff we're going through ourselves, I could have set myself the task, I'm going to work out 4 days this week. And I managed once. Yeah. And I just don't feel my best. But I do the things that make that day feel a little bit easier for me. And if that means dressing up a little bit more that day or being an extra coordinator, I don't know what it is, knowing that I need to go and spend the day with one of my sisters just to chill, decompress, do nothing. You've just got to be honest with yourself as to what those things mean. But as I say, I feel like while you're going through this season of learning to enjoy what you've desired for such a long time, do the inside out work, but feel free to do work from the outside in at the same time. And that's how I'm going to leave it. So I hope you enjoyed today's discussion. We'll be back next week. Our next few topics are going to be even more juicy. So please stick with us and we'll be back soon.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Make sure you follow us on all of our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at 3mums, except for Instagram, which is 3_mums. And make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube.
I have so many questions.